Thank you very much. Karen Bennett was having some difficulties trying to log in, so hopefully she'll be able to, and I'll help her in a minute. But I did want to thank everybody for being here and have a few comments on where we are. The last meeting was where Michael Thurman called us together and gave us the charge of his resolution. This is really the initial meeting of our commission, and I'm honored to be part of it. It's very important that DeKalb County has the type of representation that we deserve, and we're very honored that Michael Thurman has taken the time to invest his time and energy and the county's energy into making sure that happens with the Charter Review Commission. The commission was appointed with very esteemed people, and I think, having talked to most of you, really impressed with the quality and scope of people's knowledge and abilities on this commission. So I would like to thank Michael Thurman, and when I finish, I'm going to divert a little bit just to see if he has anything to say. Second of all, I'd like to say thank you to Virginia Harris. She will be the vice chair of this commission, and at any time I'm unable to serve, she will take over. I want to also mention that this is an organizational meeting, but we will continue that next meeting. In the proclamation, it mentions we're supposed to elect a secretary. I didn't want to do that without mentioning it to people, so I plan to do that at next meeting to elect a secretary. If anybody has an interest, they can contact me, or just be prepared next meeting to offer yourself for consideration and look for a nomination. We also, at the next meeting, will present some bylaws that will have a general structure. Till that time, we're basically operating under Robert's Rules of Order, and we'll do that for this meeting. They want to mention when we do the bylaws, the roll call that Candace Rogers is on the County Ethics Commission, so she was on your list, but she will not be here today. I wanted to mention briefly too on staffing, because a lot of people have mentioned it to us, that we're still working that out. We've talked to both Georgia State, and Charles Hankla, I think, is on the line, and he's been a help and offered some possible solutions. Also talked to Carl Vinson School of Government, and Lori Brill is on the line. She is also, they're preparing a proposal. So both of those I'll share with the CEO and to Zach in this coming week or so, and hopefully we'll get the support that you all deserve. There is a resolution, if we wish to adopt it, that will be available at the new business for staffing, that basically just says everything that Michael Thurman has already promised us, and probably no necessity, except for we want the public to know that we're serious and we want to do the best job we can. Mr. Thurman has said that what resources we need, he will do everything he can to provide for us, and we deeply appreciate that commitment. They are taking minutes, or recording this, and we'll put this on the webpage tomorrow. They are also transcribing minutes that will be available in the near future. So do want to mention to you also that when we get to the end, we're going to talk about meetings, and that's always a difficult topic. The intention right now is for us to meet today, and then I hope to meet, and you can tell me if there's a problem when we get to the end of the meeting today, but June 22nd, which is a Wednesday, and July 20th, which is a Wednesday. Normally we'll try to meet once a month, but I think it's good to go over the county organizational act as it is, and I expect the next two meetings will be a good time to do that, and Vivian, the county attorney, has agreed to go over the organizational act, so we'll have a good framework as we go on. Hopefully after that, we'll start some of the more meetings more dedicated to public comment. The resolution that Michael Thurman put forth requires public comment at each meeting. So at the end of this meeting, we'll have some public comment, and we'll make sure that we have some at every meeting, but some of our meetings will be dedicated to that purpose. So I just wanted to make those general statements. I want to thank the speakers that have agreed to speak today, get their input, knowledge, and want to thank each of them. The Zachary Williams, who's been a tremendous help, has mentioned that a senior staffer would be a good person to be on each meeting. So he suggested that we have Damon Scott today. Later, I'll talk to each of you, and we'll see if there's other people we should request from CEO Thurman or from Mr. Williams that we'd like to hear presentations from. But Ms. Scott will tell us a little bit of one of the government services and how that goes. And then later we can see how that fits into our overall plan of addressing all the issues. Again, Ms. Thurman said at the meeting on April 18th that he wants quality, not speed necessarily. The resolution was from last year. In fact, originally 2019, but we don't expect to be done, or at least I don't expect to be accomplished and finished by the end of this year. I'm expecting that it'll be more like October of next year. We'll have a product that the legislature could look at, and hopefully a little sooner, but have them have a little time to vet it and the commissioners take a look at it before anything would be recommended for legislative action. So, we have 5 public meetings in everybody's district. So I don't see any way we're going to be done by the legislative session this year. We're really looking at a year from now. So that with that preliminary comments, I'd like to call the roll. Of course, I am here. Virginia Harris, Vice Chair. Virginia, are you here? Okay. Karen Bennett.
I'm here.
Good deal. Claudette Leaks, I saw.
Here.
Mary Hinkle. Mary.
Here.
Thank you. Candace Rogers may be on your list, but that was an error since she is on the Ethics Commission, and Manuel Jones will address that. Will find us a good person. Lance Hammonds.
Here.
Oh, yeah. Karen Carter. No. Robert Wittenstein, sorry.
Here.
Saw him. Susan Nugent.
Here.
Let's see, Larry Johnson's appointment is Bobby Sanford.
I'm here. Hello.
Sounds good. I have one list with you on and one with you off. We're going to double check that, but I'm honored, Bobby. You're a long time great servant to this county. Great to see you.
Thank you so much. Good seeing you too.
Thank you. And then Steve Bradshaw's appointment, we did have Brandon Wiggum from last time, but I'm not certain that's still current, so I'm going to double check that. We have Clara Black DeLay. I thought I saw Clara. Yeah. Clara.
I'm here having a hard time unmuting, but I'm here.
Thank you. Jim Grubiak. Jim Grubiak.
Here.
Jim's here.
I'd be surprised if we wouldn't. Dwight Thomas. Okay, we'll check on Dwight. Vicki Turner. Vicki Turner may not be here. Vicki Turner is one of the people that had trouble with Mondays nights because of the school board meetings. And then, of course, Emmanuel and Carla Drenner are both here. And John Turner had emailed me earlier that he probably would not be here tonight. He's the alternate for the House, and he will participate in the future. So thank you so much. Now I would like to digress a little bit from the thing just to see if our creator and leader, Michael Thurman, has anything he'd like to comment on.
Not at this time, Senator. Welcome. And once again, thank you for your service. And I want to congratulate all my elected officials who made it through political season unscathed. Senator, I want to officially congratulate you. I don't know whether Representative Bennett actually had any opposition this time. I think you were unopposed. And congratulations to all of you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, CEO. Now we'll go ahead without further delay and introduce our guest speakers. We look forward to their knowledge, any charge they may give us, or any recommendations. It may be a little earlier for them to get too detailed, but we really appreciate your time tonight. Commissioner Patrick, presiding officer.
Thank you very much, Senator Henson. I sure appreciate that. And thank you for everyone that's in attendance. I know this is a level of service that we don't typically have in the daily operations of the county or in our role as elected officials at the state level. But every once in a while, it is appropriate to sort of take a look and see where we are and how effective or how efficient we are. And I think that this right here with the CEO has convened is a step in that direction, which is ultimately getting to the question, which is one of the things he called out in the executive order is how harmonious are county ordinances or the org act with the idea of delivering good quality services to our residents. And I think that that ultimately is what you guys are going to be charged with. And that's not an easy task. When I look at the organizational chart, what I see is essentially our CEO is a strong mayor, and the Board of Commissioners is a policy body that interacts with the CEO. It has its strengths. It does have some of its weaknesses, but I would say, during the pandemic, one of the shining examples of the strength of the CEO's position is the effectiveness of the responses that we've had during the pandemic. That ranges anywhere from responses to food insecurity to organizing vaccine events, and then receiving the CARES Act as well as the ARP funding to distribute out towards our residents, be they living in the city or unincorporated DeKalb County. And so, it's always tricky to ferret out what works well and what has some areas that need to be modified or tweaked up. But I think that, with calm minds, the solution and the way forward will be easily presented. And I see a lot of the people here. I know Mr. Wittenstein, who I had appointed from Dunwoody, has some experience with setting up the city of Dunwoody. At the end of the day, the question will always be, do we get good services to our residents? And that is why we're all here for this. So very simple, but very important topic and issue to sort of find our way through. And I also ultimately wish you guys a lot of luck and success on this. It's not an easy thing, and at times maybe ferreting out individual personalities versus the process. And that is also a very hard task, is finding out what works. Is it an institutional issue, or is it one of the elected officials, which sometimes happens. Anyway, with that, Senator Henson, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Does any of the commission members have anything specific they want to ask Ms. Patrick this time?
A quick question, Commissioner. You heard Chairman Henson talk about the need for having staffing and support for us to carry out our tasks. What's the process for getting funding appropriated for this? Is that something that this commission needs to initiate, or is that something that the Board of Commissioners takes care of, or is that the CEO, or how does that work?
Well, I think Senator Henson said that you guys will have some initial input from staff as well as from Carl Vincent, sort of forming what your expectations are or where you guys want to go. So I would think the first thing would be to sort of understand what your needs are going to be. Obviously put those to paper and then present those to either the CEO or to the Board of Commissioners, and then we will see how we can accommodate to help you guys achieve your expectations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that, Maya, and appreciate that question, Jim. As the executive order mentions, that the CEO's order says that staffing will be, given to us and help be given to us. And of course, Zach Williams has also said that he would help address that, and also talked about possibly the timeline, good timeliners, make sure we present that. So we're confident we'll get the help, but we want to make sure, and I'm glad that Mr. Grubiak brought that up. We're going to need your help to help the commissioner, the chair, CEO, and Zach and everybody else make sure it works. It's all part of the team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wants to ask anything? If not, we'll go on to the next presenter. Senator Emmanuel Jones, we appreciate you being here very much, Chairman of the DeKalb Senate Delegation.
Thank you, Steve, and certainly to our CEO, Michael Thurman, and the other commissioners that are online with us. Thank you. I know there are some in the General Assembly that have said this is long past being overdue, but I certainly appreciate DeKalb County and their approach, particularly their deliberate approach to knowing when time is best for the county to have this kind of an exercise. And I agree with our CEO that now I think is a good time to go through this exercise, and I applaud him for running this Charter Review Commission so that some of these issues concerning DeKalb County, they can be hashed out certainly in the public arena rather than in a legislative arena. And I just want to remind the members that 15, 16 years ago, barely when I was a freshman legislator, I was given the task of looking at the structure of DeKalb County government. And I believe my senior senator, who is now presiding over this meeting, Senator Henson, encouraged me to do so. The result of that was the outcome that we now have as the form of government in DeKalb County. And I had the distinct pleasure of traveling around the county from the north, south, and the east to west, having a series of meetings and looking at what was then the current form of government in DeKalb County and what we thought legislatively would make sense on behalf of the county. And of course, the end result of that was that the legislature tweaked the charter for DeKalb County and created more of a separation between the CEO, the chief executive, and of course, the board of commissioners that we considered as a legislative branch. And that was the last time that I recall the legislature looking at the charter for DeKalb County. And I'm glad that 15 years later, that process is taking place again, because I know there's a lot that we all can learn. And I believe it's much better when it comes from a bottom-up approach rather than from the legislative, which is more of a top-down approach. The other concern that I have, which I think is appropriate to bring up at this time, particularly since we've gone past the redistricting and of course the reapportionment process, is that now that this Charter Review Commission is in place, that's been done. But now it's a great time for and I would hope, Senator Henson, under your leadership, that your commission will look at, what is not just the right form of government for DeKalb County, but how are the elected officials elected for DeKalb County? And I say that because there was some discussion during the General Assembly about whether or not there should be 7 equal member districts, super districts, and that actually came up during the process and during the debate. And ultimately, of course, the legislature decided to kind of keep things as it is. But I would hope that this Charter Review Commission would spend some time looking at the origins of the current commissioners and how they are elected, and whether or not it's still appropriate and responsive to the needs of the citizens of DeKalb County today. And I know in my research, there wasn't much history as to how the current form was created, but I know that with this body that you all have an ample opportunity, particularly given the guidelines that I just heard, in the time frame of October next year, to have an opportunity to look into some of those kind of issues. I would hope that this review commission would not be afraid to put any topic on the table, at least for discussion purposes. And I would hope that this review commission would certainly lean on the legislative body for any help and resources that we can provide. So I'm ready to engage this review commission any way that you all see fit from our DeKalb County Senate delegation. And certainly I join with you all in this effort. And of course, our CEO and other members in taking a deliberative look at form of government in DeKalb County.
Thank you. Any specific questions? Anybody wants to unmute or ask anything specific? Well, you think, if not, I want to comment a little bit on the at large. We in 19, there was a sole commissioner in DeKalb for a number of years. Then we went to the commission system, and for a number of years till 1990, there was at-large commissioners countywide, and because of the Civil Rights Act and minority voting, we changed the super districts that represented part of the county, so to make sure that there was participation allowed to minority candidates. And so that now is not necessarily in our way. We could go at large, we could go 7 districts, but that will be an issue that we will address later. And I expect that to be one issue that we hear when we have these meetings are really dedicated to public comment on how they think they would be best served. So we look forward to those issues to be brought up and especially fleshed out when we hear from the public. Thank you, Senator Jones. We deeply appreciate your support. We know that any action that we do, certainly we can make some recommendations possibly to the CEO and the commissioners that they could address, but as actual charter changes will have to go through the legislature and we'll need your stewardship and Representative Carla Drenner. So thank you very much. Chairman of the House Delegation, Representative Carla Drenner, we appreciate you being with us. Look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Leader Henson. And first, I'd like to thank Mr. CEO for convening this meeting tonight for all of us and for all of you that are here this evening. Thank you for participating. And Chairman Jones, thank you as well. We've worked very well together over the last few years. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if you will see, I have a visitor that just popped in. So that was not planned. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
That's how it happens right here at my house sometimes. I apologize. She kind of threw me off my statement right now. The other one will be in shortly, so I'm going to speak quickly. I think this is a perfect time post redistricting to be able to look at some of the issues that were raised during redistricting, as Senator Jones mentioned, the structure associated with, do we have 7 equal member districts? Do we have super districts? As DeKalb continues to grow, do we need more commissioners, et cetera? I personally want to say to all of you that the House, along with the Senate, would like to continue to work with you. And let me just draw your attention, Senator Henson, to a specific study that the CEO's office commissioned a few years ago. That was the service delivery study that actually is a good piece of information that the committee should entertain. Sorry, I'm a little nervous right now because you never know what's going to happen behind me. So, in conclusion, I know this is live streamed. I look forward to working with all of you, and the House stands ready to assist all of you in any legislative remedies that the Commission and the Charter Review Commission agrees upon. Thank you all. Thank you, Senator Henson. Don't call on me for any questions.
Thank you very much. Sure, they have a lot of good ones. I'll give them your cell phone number so they can text you after the meeting. I want to also recognize our Vice Chairman, Virginia Harris, I believe, has joined us. Is that correct?
Yes, I am, and I apologize. I had some electrical problems and couldn't sign on earlier here.
That is absolutely right. Earlier today, I couldn't open my emails. I thought bad day. I couldn't get on, but we enjoy the technology, but we also have our challenges. But thank you. I now am honored that ACCG, as we discussed some of the things earlier, the form of government has changed over the years in DeKalb. I've had pleasure to talk to some people who were on the original commission in '81 and have a history lesson. But it's very interesting, from having a time hundreds of years ago where nobody was elected, ran the governor, the county appointed basically by grand juries or judge extraordinaire to single county commissioners to today's form of government. Things have changed a lot. But ACCG and Clint Mueller and his team is here to tell us kind of what happens in some other counties. I think it's important that we understand where Georgia fits as far as state law regarding county governments, what other things are out there. So when we review later on, and as the public that's participating with us understands the process. They understand the other things are out there. And then, like I say, the next couple of meetings we'll go over actually our organizational act in a little more detail, so we both can ask questions about where we are. So without further ado, Clint Mueller, a representative of the Association of County Governments, we welcome you and thank you. And please extend your invitation, your introduction with some details if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Henson. Thank you, members of the committee, for having ACCG tonight at your meeting. I'm the legislative director at ACCG. I've been there a little over 24 years. In my responsibilities as legislative director, we do advocacy work, obviously. We do policy development work, but we also do training and education. So my remarks tonight are going to fall in that bucket of training and education. I'm not a policymaker. You all will be talking to policymakers, both at the county level of government as well as your state legislative delegation, and ultimately we'll have to make some decisions. So our role here tonight is just to talk to you about how other counties are organized across the state, for you all to ask any questions of myself and Bill Toomey. So Bill is our other team member that's on the line tonight. Bill is our manager of our consulting services. Bill's also served as a county manager in several counties. So he's got a unique perspective maybe that I don't have. I have not served as a county manager before. So I'm gonna have him chime in on a couple of these slides and talk about, especially when we get to the managers versus administrators and how they interact with the elected officials, for him to share his wisdom and knowledge with you all. So feel free as we go through this presentation this evening, I think you can raise your hand and or you can just unmute yourself and ask any questions of us as we go through. But again, this is supposed to be educational. We just want to lay out the various forms of government that we do have across Georgia. Georgia is very diverse. Obviously, we've got a lot of counties, so we've got a lot of examples out there, and each county does it a little differently. So with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me see if I can do that. Can you all see my screen?
Not yet. You need to select the share screen button at the bottom, and then there you go. Now it's popping in.
Go ahead and, okay, you can see the full slide there.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, just a little bit of background about our counties in Georgia. Of course, counties is one of the oldest forms of government, dating back to 1634. And first county governments for shires were established in Virginia.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, Clint, for interrupting. Yes. Will we be receiving this presentation? I wanted to know in case I had to take copious notes, or will be
actually, yes. In fact, Zach did try to and he came on, did email that out to everybody earlier. If you didn't get it though, just text me and I will make sure that it does go back out to you. In fact, Karen, I will forward it to you right after me. Zach, did you have anything to say?
No, I was just going to say that we had sent it, but I can try and send it to you right now, Representative.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And let me say, in addition to this presentation, we've got a county commissioner's handbook. This is a handbook that we make available to all new county commissioners across the state. We're in the process right now of updating that handbook. And one of the chapters in that handbook is on forms of government. We've got a draft. It hasn't been publicly released, but you all have got a copy of the draft. I think we're about ready to release it. We'll probably release it in a couple months, but I've also shared that with your committee. So feel free to maybe read that chapter when you have a chance. Okay, so counties function differently according to the state and even within each state. Obviously in each state, there's a difference between what powers get delegated down to local government and which powers the state keeps. Ultimately, counties and cities were both subdivisions of the state of Georgia. Although, in Georgia and other states, the counties really are the local arm of the state because we serve 100% of the state population, just like the state does. So when there's local services that need to be provided locally and the state decides not to provide them, those services typically are pushed down to the county level of government. Nationally, there are over 3,142 county governments. Again, they function very differently state by state. The largest population county is Los Angeles County out in California. think they've got over 4 million people in that county. Smallest population county is in Hawaii. In Georgia here, we have 159 counties. We're second only to Texas. Texas has 254 counties, but also remember Texas is a much, much larger state land-wise geographically than Georgia is. So in Georgia, we do have a considerable number of counties. And we provide a lot of services down at the county level. So in other states, for example, in North Carolina, the state does most of the roads. In Georgia, 80% of our road network is done at the county level. Now, if you look at volume, traffic volumes, obviously the state routes have the higher volume, but as far as lane miles, most of the lane miles are actually at the county level. So I point that out that just across the country, different services are provided at different levels of government, but in Georgia, we provide a lot of things at the county level. In some states, the counties are over the schools. Now, maybe you all think fortunately or unfortunately that's not the case, but in Georgia, we have a separate school board, so we're not involved directly with the schools other than you all have to levy their millage rate. But besides that, it's not like counties in some states that do have direct responsibilities over the schools. So let's really talk more about here in Georgia what we have. We've got 8 consolidated governments. So we've got the most consolidated governments of any state. And you would think that maybe the consolidated governments would be larger governments, but no, we have some small ones too. So it started with Columbus, Muskogee. That was the first one in the state. Then we have Athens, Clarke County. The newest one is Macon-Bibb, but then we have some small ones like Webster County. So we've got all sizes of consolidated governments. These governments, yes.
A consolidated government, is that when a city and a county work together? Is that what that is?
Well, they not just work together, actually, they have merged together. So it is one governmental body. So they've got one governmental authority over the entire county, and they're providing city services and county services for that entire county area. So it would be like, DeKalb provides a lot of city services in your unincorporated area. You all really wear 2 hats in the unincorporated area. One for those county services that where you're acting as an arm of the state. And then another is a city type of service where you're providing things like water and sewer and police and fire and those types of services. But these particular consolidated governments, there are no cities. Well, I say that Athens has a very small city within their boundaries. It was grandfathered in and a few others, but by and large, they don't really have cities. The county consolidated government is serving as both the city and the county. Again, we have Athens, Clarke, Augusta, Richmond, Columbus, Muskogee, Macon-Bibb, they're the newest. So those are all fairly large ones, and we have some small ones. Many times what we see with consolidated governments, you've got pretty much one dominant city or only one city in that county, and it makes it easy because you're just consolidating with one city. Obviously, it becomes a little bit more challenging when you got multiple cities. If we're to try to move to consolidation, you've got to consolidate with multiple cities.
And Clint,
yes,
by state law, that would be done by a legislative action of the state. Would it require a referendum locally or not required?
So on my last slide, I'm going to get to that. There's actually 4 different ways you can do it, but yes, it's going to require legislative involvement. We don't have any examples. We don't have any examples of consolidations where you have a major city left in the county, but that could happen. I know let's take, for example, Savannah, Georgia. If Chatham County were to consolidate with some of its other cities and become a consolidated government, they could still have a city within the consolidated government. DeKalb could do the same thing. But we haven't had that occur in Georgia yet. Again, we have a few little, like in Athens, Clarke County, there's a very small city in that consolidated government. There's none in Macon-Bibb. There's none in Columbus, Muskogee. There's none in Augusta. Well, there's a small one in Augusta, Richmond too. I take that back. There is a small one. But we don't have any big cities within a consolidated government. So by and large, if they're a consolidated government, they pretty much are running everything throughout the whole county. So we have 816 county commissioners across the state. The sizes vary. We've got from a sole commissioner, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, all the way to 11-member board. Our consolidated governments typically have the largest number of boards. And that probably comes from their history when they were, trying to consolidate city council districts with county commission districts. The typical size of most counties, though, is about a 5-member board. That's what we see the most, at least in our state. There's really nothing legislatively that requires a certain number of county commission seats. That's really up to each county through their local acts to decide how many commissioners they have to serve on their board. And another thing that's unique about Georgia is we are the only state now that has sole commissioners. We have 7 counties now that still have sole commissioners. Only ones that have that. In fact, a few years ago, our sole commissioners created the National Association of Sole Commissioners. And I was kind of laughing at it because they were able to create a national association because they had 100% of the membership right here in our state. So I'm going to talk about 6 forms of government. In Georgia, our largest populated county is Fulton County, and our smallest is Tolliver County. Tolliver's, I think, right around 2,000 people. So we have some really small counties when you talk about only 2,000 people in them, all the way up to counties that are at 1 million or approaching 1 million. Obviously, DeKalb, you all are, I think, getting close to 1 million. I believe you're definitely right there in the largest counties in the state. So forms of government, traditional board of commissioners. That's what most counties have. I'll talk a lot about this in a little bit. I'll probably spend most of my time here. Sole commissioners, I've already mentioned that. That's when you have a single county commissioner, runs the whole county. The largest sole commissioner county is Bartow County, which is, if y'all know where Cartersville is, up the northwest corridor, up 75. That's the largest sole commissioner run county in the state. I guess it's a really good form of government if you got a really good sole commissioner. It's the ultimate in accountability, right? There's nobody to point the fingers at. The buck stops with that person. However,
so Clint, how big is that county?
They're a little over 100,000. I think I want to say they're around 140 something thousand people. Most of the 7 counties that have sole commissioners, though, they're smaller counties. They're 30, 40 something thousand people. With the sole commissioner, though, if you get a really bad one in there, they can do a lot of damage. We had that years ago. We had one particular sole commissioner, I won't mention the county, that got in there and did a lot of damage, and it took years to sort of undo all of that was done. Interesting that.
And I would think that a sole commissioner, one of the problems is minority representation, right? If you have one guy or gal getting elected countywide and they have to represent everybody, if you've got a minority population in that county, my guess is that it's hard for them to get the level of recognition or representation they might want.
Yes, and most the 7 that we have left, most of them are up sort of in. I'll show you a map in a little bit, but most of them are sort of up in the North Georgia mountain area. We do have 2 still in central Georgia, though, not too far from Macon. And then I'm going to talk about manager, form of government, administrative form of government. When you say form of government, really a manager and administrator, and we're going to talk about the difference between those 2 in a little bit, but you can pair a manager with any of the rest. I mean, for example, the sole commissioner in Bartow County, he has a county administrator that works alongside him and really acts in many ways like a manager. And then we have managers that work with full-time commission chairs as well as part-time commission chairs. So we'll talk more about that, but you can really pair county managers and administrators with all these different combinations of boards of commissioners. And we have the elected executive, which is what DeKalb has. You all are the only one in the state that has that particular form of government. And I've already mentioned consolidated governments. Go back to the map here. That shows you, so the yellow highlighted counties, those are the sole commissioner counties. So we got.
Excuse me, Clint.
Yes.
What would you say is the DeKalb form of government? Aren't there other governments that has an elected chief executive?
So we have actually up here in Dade County, they call their chief, basically their chairman of their county commission is called a CEO. And we'll talk more about this, but with our traditional boards of commissioners, there's a chairman, and we'll talk about what a strong
No, I don't mean the title of the position, but you're talking form of government. They are elected chief executives. They may be called mayors, they may be called CEOs, but there are others. Are you referring only to the name, or are you referring to the form of government?
So I think Chairman Thurman, I think the easiest way to look at it is you're right. There's executive powers that are given to individuals on the boards of commissioners, but they are actually a member of the board of commissioners. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but your position, you've got some separation there. You don't actually vote as a member of the board of commissioners when you're setting policy. All these other people that I'm going to talk about, they actually serve on the board of commissioners and they vote. Now, yes, they may be given executive authority to act for the board, but they're still part of that board of commissioners. They are a member of the board of commissioners. And I don't believe you're in your position, you're not a member of the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners. You're separate from that. And that's the
mayor of Augusta. Does the mayor of Augusta serve on the commission?
No, but they're consolidated governments. So they operate a little differently than a board of commissioners. They operate more like the cities. And we're not going to talk too much about the city form of government, but I would say they're more structured like a city type of government where you have a mayor. But yes, they call themselves mayors and they operate more like a strong mayor would.
Right, but they are counties though, in fact, aren't they?
That's right. They're in a sense, they're both county and a city. It's consolidated government. But when they took on their form of government, you'll find that the consolidated governments took on a form that's more like what you would find in a city, where you have they call them commissioners, but obviously in the city call them city council, but they do have mayors of the consolidated governments. So they actually call them mayor. They don't call them CEO or chairman of, like we in the county government world, we call, chairman of the county commission typically, but they have actually mayors. They call them mayors. But yeah, that would be probably the closest thing to what you all have would be the consolidated governments, where they have that separate mayor executive position.
A separate elected executive.
Yes.
And I think even with the county commission chairman, there are some commissioners with chairman that have more managerial or executive powers than others. A lot of gray areas there. Some of them with very strong commission chairmen to have a lot of executive authority. And as you know, CEO Thurman, prior to 2008, the DeKalb CEO was meeting with the commission and voted to make ties and stuff. That was a legislative change at that time. So a lot of gray areas though in a lot of these counties.
Yeah, and I'll start. It just, is some fascination with the title CEO, but not looking at the legal authority granted through charters, which I think is more relevant than titles, whether it's mayor or CEO or chairman.
No, you're absolutely right, Chairman Thurman. It's really where are the powers vested and where does the executive powers reside versus the policymaking powers. And a lot of times there's overlap there. Obviously with the sole commissioner, that's the ultimate overlap, right? They are the only policymaking body and they are the only executive of the whole county. So as strong as your position may be, you're still not the strongest in the state. You got to become a sole commissioner to get there. So yeah, you can see that Board of Commissioners, the light blue, that's where the majority of the counties are. They typically just have a Board of Commissioners. And again, we're going to talk a lot about the chair because the chair can have a lot of powers or not much at all. And so really, when you talk about the three branches of government, we're not going to talk about the judicial branch. They're separate. We kind of did away with that years ago. Although your probate judge is still doing a few things that are executive in nature. And at one time in Georgia's history, the probate judges were actually actually running counties in Georgia. And then if there's still some provisions in law that if something happened to all the Board of Commissioners, that the probate judge would step in and temporarily run the county. So, but by and large, we try to have a separation of powers there where the judicial branch is separate. But when it comes at the county level government, when it comes to the policymakers versus those providing implementation, the executive powers, there's a lot of overlap there. So with our traditional Board of Commissioners, they're kind of one and the same. The Board of Commissioners, they're the policymakers and they're the executives. Now, some exceptions there is when you have a county manager and they grant some of those executive powers to a county manager. But by and large, it's the full Board of Commissioners is having to vote to take policy actions as well as a lot of the executive actions. So we'll talk about those as we go through some of these specific ones. So we're going to start with, again, the most common, which is boards of commissioners. They primarily policy-making and executive responsibilities and gives to the Board of Commissioners. While the policy-making function is performed as the board collectively, the executive function can vary. So what do I mean by that? Depends on given functions and assignments to individual commissioners. It may include hiring department heads for certain functions, supervised by committees made up of members of the Board of Commissioners, supervised by entire board, or have chairperson to handle the day-to-day activities. So we have commission chairs that run countywide and are elected countywide. We have commission chairs that are voted on by the rest of the board. So they're just, in other words, like a district commissioner, and they're elected by their fellow board members to serve as chair, maybe only for a year. And then we have full-time and part-time chairs. So what I see is when you start giving executive powers to the chairman of the county commission, those tend to be the ones that are full-time, obviously, because they're really running the day-to-day business of the county. And a lot of times, most of the time, I would say, they're also elected countywide. That's the most common where we see a strong county commission chair. Again, they run countywide and they have executive powers that are given to them. And these have to be done legislatively. So that's, again, it's part of the form of government that they have these executive powers. And, they may vote on every policy decision, or they may only vote in the case of a tie. So we have both. So I would say these types of chairmen are going to look maybe more like how the CEO functions in DeKalb County, except for in this case, again, they're actually a member of the Board of Commissioners and they vote on all the policy issues that the other board members vote on. As far as the election of the county Board of Commissioners, we have a few counties that still, they run countywide. They may have only 2 or 3, 4, well, we don't may have 2. So up to 3 commissioners, up to 5 commissioners, and they could all run countywide. Not too many of those left, though. A lot of them run by district. And then, of course, you have where they run individually and only their district. And then you have overlapping districts. I think that's what you'll have in DeKalb with the super districts, where you have districts that overlap one another. And then we have some counties still that have even multiple commissioners that run within a district, so by post. So you could have, say, 2 commissioners running in the same district. Again, that's not too common with counties. That's more common with the city form of government. So there's all these variations as far as how the county commissioners are elected, again, by district or countywide, but it's the chair position that we most commonly see running countywide, especially if they're going to have executive powers. And so, what do we mean again by executive powers? The main thing is they're hiring and firing the department heads, or they have the authority to hire and fire the department heads. If you could have a manager or an administrator paired with a strong county commission chair. I typically see more where it's a county administrator. And the big difference between a county manager and administrator is the manager has more executive authority. So a manager is really putting together the budget, hiring and firing department heads. And administrators serving in a role more where they're assisting the chief executive officer. Again, if it's a county chairman, then they're assisting the county chairman. Traditional commissions, we have 27 counties. Boards operating under this format have 3 to 7 members, with 5 members being the most common. 20 have a full-time chair. Counties that use this form of government range in population. Again, we have some very small ones all the way up to Clayton County. I've talked already a good bit about sole commissioners. Obviously, they have full policymaking and executive responsibilities. For the sole commissioners, also employ county managers to help with the executive function. So yeah, it's not uncommon to, you have a sole commissioner that ultimately has responsibility for both the policy and executive functions, but they employ a manager or an administrator to really help with the day-to-day operations. There you go. There's somebody asked a question earlier about Bartow County, the population of 108,000, a little over 108,000. That's what the sole commissioner form of government looks like. Again, you still have constitutional officers that are separate. So the sole commissioner, although they have budget responsibilities to these constitutional officers, the constitutional officers still retain full authority for running their operations, their day-to-day operations. County manager, in a county manager form of government, the Board of Commissioners fills the primary policymaking role and oversees the executive functions of the county, but assigns the day-to-day duties of the executive role to the manager selected by the board. And again, this could vary greatly as to what executive decisions the board wants to retain versus which ones they delegate to the manager. It could be different from county to county. We've got some counties that like to delegate just about everything to the manager, and others that say, no, we want to retain some decision-making at the board levels. Purchasing decisions is an example. Which types of purchases can the manager sign off on? Which types of purchases do they want the manager to actually have to come back for a board approval? The manager is granted substantial executive authorities, such as the ability to hire and fire department heads. In preparation of the budget, manager reports to the full board of managers rather than a single office holder. We've got 65 counties that have a manager form of government. Be careful when you look at the titles, though, across the state. What was talked about earlier with titles. We've got some counties, I can tell you, that they say they have a manager, but if you actually look at what that person does, they really act more like an administrator, and vice versa. We've got some counties that have what they call it an administrator that really acts more like a manager. Again, it really depends on what the powers of that position are. Here's one way to differentiate the two. If you've got a county manager, that's going to be in your local enabling act, because to give them those true executive powers, that has to be done through the local enabling act. Where a county administrator, you can do that through a simple vote of your board of commissioners. You don't need to get your local delegation involved in passing local legislation to do that. So we have counties that say, for example, they had a full-time chairman that was running the county, and then one day they decided that they had grown to such a size that they needed a more professional management. They decided to hire an administrator. Well, they could do that on their own without having to get any kind of local legislation passed to do that. Counties with this form of government range from Baker County with a population of a little less than 3,000 to Fulton County with a population of a little over 1 million. This is the county manager form of government. So you see that the county manager really sits between the Board of Commissioners and your department heads. So the department heads are reporting directly to the county manager instead of, say, the chairman of the county commission or somebody else. Then we have the county administrator. They have responsible policymaking executive functions, but has advisory. So they're acting more of an advisory role to to the Board of Commissioners on policy and executive matters. Varies greatly by county. Like I said, we've got some counties that have administrators that the Board of Managers has delegated a lot of responsibilities to. But ultimately, do they have hiring and firing authority over the department heads? If they're a manager, they really don't have ultimate hiring and firing authority over the department heads. The way it works is they can bring a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners and say, hey, I think we need to get rid of our road department director. But it would be take an act of the Board of Commissioners to actually fire that person or hire the replacement. Board has the power to appoint or remove the administrator, although in some cases the chair may have this power. 59 counties in Georgia have this form of government. Boards operating under this form of government on average have 5-member boards. Counties with this form of government range in population from Gwinnett with a population of about 1 million to Clay County, about 3,000 in population. So I want to stop right here and go back to, again, talk about these two slides, the manager and county administrator form of government. And there's a slide that shows you how the administrator works. See, the administrator sits off to the side here. Instead of being directly in between the Board of Commissioners and the department heads, they don't have that direct link that you have with the county manager. Again, they are probably overseeing the department heads on a day-to-day basis, but they can't make a lot of decisions without taking those to the Board of Commissioners and giving the Board of Commissioners a recommendation and letting the Board of Commissioners take the official action. Where with the manager form of government, they don't even consult with the Board of Commissioners. They have the authority already just to take the official action if they want to get rid of any of these department heads. And so they've just got more authority. Bill, do you want to talk or add anything here, sort of the difference between a manager versus an administrator?
Yeah, thank you, Clint. And I thank the group for having us here this evening as well. I've heard it said, and I think it's somewhat erroneous, that it's a matter of semantics, the definition between administrator and manager. More than semantics, it should be clearly defined either by a change in the Enabling Act or the adoptive ordinance in the case of an administrator. As long as the occupant knows the clearly defined role, I think things operate fairly smoothly. What we've run into a time or two, even very recently, is a situation where the enabling legislation called for one definition, and over a period of time, that definition had morphed at the county level until it bubbled to the surface and had to be revisited. So no matter which of these is chosen, I think it's a matter of clear definition going in.
What would the diagram look like for our form of government, CEO? Would it be next to the Board of Commissioners on this or above it, or where would it fall in?
Actually, I have a slide on that.
Okay.
Here in a second, we'll get to that. One other thing I'll say with the county, especially with the county administrator. So in some counties, they report, the county administrator basically works directly under the chairman. Usually like when you have a full-time chairman or a chairman that's elected countywide that's part-time but still is sort of overseeing the day-to-day business of the county. But sometimes that administrator gets pulled in different directions because individual commissioners obviously want to talk to the county administrator, and they're talking to the county administrator about what's going on, say, in their district. And sometimes there's some friction there between the county administrator having primary reporting responsibility to, say, the chairman versus the other district commissioners. Ultimately, the Board of Commissioners as a whole, as a body, usually gets to decide whether a county manager is fired or not. But there can be some confusion there sometimes between the county manager's responsibilities to, say, the chairman versus the other board members. Bill?
And Clint, along those same lines, if I could also add, as you might well imagine, and it's actually demonstrated if you think about it in the two charts, there's some additional politics involved where the administrator can fairly easily be worked around by a strong department head that has an in with one of the board members. It gets murky sometimes in an administrative form of government. The administrator has too many directions, too many irons in the fire, as compared to the manager who has a clearly delineated kind of linear service throughout the organization.
Yeah, I agree. I think I hear a lot of frustration sometimes from administrators about where's their responsibilities versus serving the entire board versus an individual board member versus, say, the chairman of the board. And then you've got some counties that will break up responsibilities and put different commissioners over different, say, departments. And that can really get messy when you've got different commissioners sort of overseeing different departments, and you got like a county administrator then reporting to different commissioners depending on what the department is that they're dealing with. So then we've got what DeKalb has, the elected executive. This form of government is similar to the separation of power structure of state government, where obviously you have a governor that performs the executive functions and the legislature that performs the policy-making functions. The Board of Commissioners performs the policy-making functions of government, while the county executive heads the executive branch. CEO can be given limited or extensive powers. This is similar to the strong and weak mayoral form of government. Again, I think we talked about consolidated governments earlier. This is where I think DeKalb is more similar to several of our consolidated governments in this regard. If the CEO is given extensive powers, he or she could have the power to appoint or remove department heads and develop the county budget and may veto acts of the Board of Commissioners. CEO Thurman, do you have veto authority in your county? Are you able to veto acts of the Board of Commissioners?
I would never contemplate such a thing.
So you don't have that. So
I may have it, but let's just say I haven't considered it.
You haven't exercised it. Because that's again where you're similar to more of the consolidated governments, where you have a mayor in some of our consolidated governments again that has that authority to veto policy set by whatever they call it, the commission or the council. Under the limited or weak executive model, the CEO may be required to receive board approval to appoint or remove department heads, may only coordinate the budget process, and may not have veto power. I would say in DeKalb County, you're a strong CEO, and so you're going to be more similar to the strong mayor type form of government. So the strong mayor in like a consolidated government.
But there are two positions. I think the COO and the county attorney. Is that right, Matt Welch? That has to have commission approval.
Yes, sir. Those two are dual appointees under our organizational act. They're appointed by you, confirmed by the Board of Commissioners, sir.
So is that, you said the county attorney, did you also say the county clerk?
County attorney and our COO, who also serves as the executive assistant.
Okay. Yeah, in most counties across the state, the Board of Commissioners makes the decision on the county attorney and the county clerk in most of our counties. Separate. So in other words, even if you have a manager form of government, the manager would not be hiring or firing the clerk or the county attorney. That's usually reserved directly for the Board of Commissioners, even with a manager form of government. So somebody asked earlier about what the organizational chart would look like for the executive form of government. Here it is. So you'll see, you still got, again, these constitutional officers that are separate. Then you've got the Board of Commissioners, and then you've got the Chief Executive Officer. And then here, the Board of Commissioners is hiring the attorney, the clerk, the auditor. I guess the auditor could be.
Yeah, that's not quite right, I don't think. The Board of Commissioners approved the county attorney and the COO in DeKalb County.
Right, so y'all recommend, you recommend them, and then
He appoints and they have approval power. So he would appoint the CEO in DeKalb, And then the commission would have a certain number of days to approve the appointment, et cetera. Same, I think, for county attorney. Is that right, Ms. Thurman?
That is correct.
Is that
That's
right,
correct.
Attorney Welch?
So what Mr. Henson said is correct, that this chart is a little bit off for DeKalb in that, as we just said, the attorney and the county attorney and the COO/executive assistant are joint. We think of them as joint appointees, but I think Mr. Henson is correct. They are appointed by the CEO and then confirmed by our Board of Commissioners. And as to our auditing board, that's also covered by our organizational act, and we have an Office of Internal Audit that has a particular appointment procedure, but it does involve both our executive and our legislative branches.
Yeah, and just so you all know, this was not supposed to represent DeKalb County here. Our research director, Michelle Neesmith, put this presentation together. She's getting these things from national publications. So this is sort of, in general, how it looks, but it's not specific, obviously, to DeKalb County. You all a little different than this. And like I said, you probably should have some dotted lines, right? Because it sounds like in your situation, the attorney has responsibilities directly to the Board of Commissioners, but also responsibilities directly to the Chief Executive Officer, to probably both, I assume.
That's correct.
Yeah. So we probably should some dotted lines here to show that there's dual reporting responsibilities.
Right. So as to the CEO's point earlier, I mean, this shows that the very fact that there's an org chart of sorts that shows how this works other places demonstrates the CEO's point that, while we may be unique in title here in Georgia, this structure does exist throughout the country. And as you said, Clint, we're more similar to a strong mayor form of government. But yeah, this is generally right for us, but there are those joint appointees of my legislative and executive branches here.
And would that include the, excuse me, finance director and planning?
No, ma'am.
Appointment by nomination by the CEO, approved by the Board of Commissioners?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so. I believe that those are direct CEO hires in DeKalb County.
Okay.
Department heads are administrative function, which under the CEO in DeKalb. And COO does involve himself, is that correct, with the management of those department heads himself, but.
Correct.
Susan, did you have a question? I see your hand up.
There we go. I was just going to ask, I guess at some point, Chairman Henson, we will go into more detail about the DeKalb form of government. Yes. And we do that just, just these dual appointments and the approval on each of them, the county attorney and the CO, that sort of thing, so that we know that which of the two positions, like Claudette was just asking, whether or not the finance chief is also.
Yes, and I know it's a tedious process, but going over these, I mean, first of all, there's a reason the DeKalb County government is as it is. There back in the 80s were issues with 4 commissioners trying to get this managed and that managed. So, it's developed over a historical time. So we're gonna take all that into account. We know where we are, but we're gonna then, over the next 2 meetings, look at org act itself, and you'll have a question. You can ask the attorney, Vivian or Matthew. I don't know who's going to present it, but somebody in the attorney's office is going to present the org act. Then you can specifically ask on that section when she goes over the appointment of the CEO. Who does that and that sort of thing. So with the next 2 meetings, we're going to go through the org act. We'll see it a little more detailed how it is in the DeKalb. That's really where we're going to be working from the framework. This kind of background, so you, especially when you talk to the public or other people, and they talk about county commission chairman or this or that, you have a broader understanding of what's out there. I mean, there'll be nuances that are, I think the ultimate thing when we get the changes, maybe these nuances of little things that happen in the budget, that we need to look at. I believe our CEO is a continuation, actually, the previous appointment. I don't know if been appointed this time. So, we'll have to look at all these little nuances that come out, but we will get through that in the next year. But yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll say for the larger counties in our state, and I'll define large counties as counties with at least 100,000 or more in population. The most typical form of government that you're going to see is the traditional county commission with a manager. So it'll be typically like a 5-member board of commissioners. Usually the chairman is running at large countywide. The chairman may be part-time or full-time. Typically in the really large counties, whether they call part-time or full-time, I can tell you they're working full-time. Really, it's just about the pay, whether they're getting part-time or full-time pay. But when you get into large counties, it's basically a full-time position, and they have a manager. So that's probably the most common form of government, at least with our large counties. Bill, do you have anything to add there as far as what's most common, I guess, amongst the larger counties?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think one of the subtleties that you get into in the where the chairman is a strong chair, you might think that an administrator would be the following of the chair, but we find that it's more often a manager because the manager steps into a more professional liaison situation between the board and those department heads. So it's kind of the opposite of the way some people may assume.
And then we talked about the 8 consolidated governments, again, ranging in population from Georgetown, Quitman, with just a little over 2,000, to Columbus, Muskogee, with a little over 206,000. Again, I think that in many ways, DeKalb has looked more like the consolidated governments because they typically have a form of government that's more like a city. And there's probably good reason for that. DeKalb, I know that you all have had some cities added in recent history, but prior to that, you all were really providing most of the municipal services. DeKalb County, I guess, urbanized a long time ago, long before you all created the new cities in Brookhaven and Dunwoody. The county was already acting like a consolidated government. You were wearing both hats. You were really doing all the things that a city does and all the things that a county does. And you're still doing that in the areas that remain unincorporated. So do Gwinnett and Cobb now too. But remember, you all, I think, urbanized sooner than even Gwinnett Cobb urbanized and began providing those city-like services long ago. And maybe that is, again, what sort of I'm sure you all will talk about this maybe at a later meeting about the history of your form of government, but I have a feeling a lot of it coincided with the urbanization of your county. Consolidated governments, somebody asked this question earlier about how they're created. There's different ways of creating consolidated governments. There's a direct creation by local act. Then there's a charter commission, I think. And then there's alternative method under general law. And then county consolidation when no cities exist. We actually had one place in the state where they had no cities and they became a consolidated government. That would not exist anywhere else because they were the only county in the state at the time that had no cities. So that does not exist anymore. So most of these are going to probably the most common is the charter commission, where you have a charter commission that sort of sets it up. But these are going to require obviously local referendum, act by your delegation at the General Assembly. So you've got to have a local act setting it up, or the charter commission that sets up sort of the form of government, and then it's voted on countywide. So everybody in the county, including if there's any cities, they would still vote on it because
I know you've got just a couple slides left after this one. We're going up soon, but I see Lance Hammond has his hand raised. Is that right?
Yeah, I was just gonna, Steve, I was just gonna ask our presenters, one second. I was just going to ask our presenters, is there any metric that your organization has for evaluating the effectiveness of a county government? I know it's subjective and everybody gets to vote, but is there a metric that you could lay out to say, or maybe a better way to say is, how do we determine what's working and what's not working? I mean, has anybody tried to measure that? I know it's probably the citizens just don't feel good about it, but is there a defined metric on how effective a form of government is?
No, we have not tried to do any metrics on what form of government may be more effective than another. I'm gonna give you my opinion here. I said I wasn't gonna do that, but in my opinion, it really doesn't matter so much the form of government. Any form of government can work well. It matters who's in the leadership positions. It's really all about, it really boils down to leadership. Like I said, the sole commissioner form of government can be the best form of government out there if you got a great leader, or it could be the worst form of government if you don't have a good leader in that position. I think even with these other forms of government, is having leaders and the interplay between the other elected officials, that they're all knowing that, hey, we're on the same team and we're working together, versus in some places we see that they look at themselves as being elected to maybe work against other people on the board. In other words, there's this constant conflict, and obviously they're not as effective as the boards that are cohesive and get things done collectively. Especially when the county commissioners view themselves, even if they're elected by district, once they're on the board of commissioners, viewing themselves as, hey, I represent now the entire county, and I'm trying to make decisions on behalf of what's good for the entire county, even when sometimes it may not be the best for my individual district. But yeah, it's all boils down to leadership. Bill, did you have anything you want to say on that?
I want to go ahead, Bill.
Just to add something, and this would be kind of a laborious task towards Mr. Hammond's question, but many counties, of course, produce a CAFR each year in conjunction with their annual report, financial report to the citizens. There's a trap door in that. The effectiveness as measured by the CAFR assumes that the CAFR has lofty goals that have been attained. So it is still somewhat objective, but I thought I would throw that in case a representative sample needs to be looked at, Mr. Hammonds.
Thank you. One thing I just will mention, I did talk to Georgia State a little bit, school economics, and just kind of general questions. How can you analyze how much tax we pay versus COG, Gwinnett, Fulton? Or how can we analyze whether our police is better or cost? The matrix of all that is so complex. I mean, you look at waste and you look at the impact of what one county did 50 years ago with landfills. It may not be, the same situation causing the price to be the same. We will get some discussion later about how we are competitive probably, but when you look at, some counties have SPLOST, we have a freeze till you sell your house. There's a lot of different nuances, the host SPLOST and other things in counties. It's really hard to get apples to apples. One thing we will look at, and of course, Michael's charge is, for us to look at, how things are run and the best delivery to citizens for our services are there. So we will look into it, but after the public hearings, we as a commission may talk about how we want to address that further, but to really break down is very subjective. It's very tough to do real close comparisons, but I think the public will give us a good insight on how they feel and things we need to look at a little closer. And then as commission, we may talk about those things. But as the two presenters just mentioned, often those things, whether your trash is picked up on Thursday, is not whether you got a CEO or sole commissioner or what have you. It's how those elected leaders are doing on it. So anyway, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. With services and revenue structure, they're so different from county to county. And, counties like DeKalb, you all have been providing these services for a long, long time, which, you know, obviously the older governments have some challenges that I'll call them the newer governments don't have, right? I mean, if you're in a high growth area of the state, like I live up in Cherokee County, and a lot of the stuff is, the infrastructure is really new because, you know, the population just exploded recently. Well, DeKalb's had a large population now for a very long time, and you've got a lot of these systems that have been in place for a long time. And now you're in the process of having to spend a lot of resources, you know, revitalizing your services. It's easier when you start brand new, right? And you build something from scratch versus taking something now and you're having to make sure you're maintaining it, renovating it, and keeping it up. So that's.
Clint, Barry Hickle had a hand probably on this topic, so I just really wanted to get to her real quick and then we'll move on.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, can we also get a copy of your Model County Commission Act that you make a reference to in this handbook section?
Yes, we can send that to you. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
And
also for the public, could you define what CAFR is?
Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It's your audit. It's your financial report.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, it's got a lot. CAFR's got a lot more. The larger counties all do the CAFR because it's got a lot more detailed information in it. But it's the financial report. In forms of government, I'm glad you've got members of your delegation on your committee, because at the end of the day, when it comes to changing forms of government, you've got to have your delegation involved through passing local legislation at the General Assembly. You can't do it through your home rule powers. All forms of government are done through local acts of the General Assembly. Any questions of myself or Bill? I know we kind of ran through all that. Again, it was meant to be high level, just to kind of give you a brief overview of, in particular, how we're organized across the state of Georgia, which again, as you've seen, we have great variety from county to county.
We can always come back. These guys are great assets to all the county governments, and we can invite them back in a future meeting if you need to. Are there any questions before we have the next speaker? Because we do want to try to reserve as much time as possible for possible comments from the public. Anybody's hand raised? I can't.
Not at this time. Not at this time, sir.
Okay. If not, we really appreciate it. We know these are a lot of variations that we deal with in Georgia. You guys don't have an easy job, and we appreciate you presenting all the different myriad of things going on. And I know it's even more complex than we got described to us, but we appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you for having us. And if we can ever put you in touch with particular counties that have particular forms of government, we'd be glad to do that. You know, we didn't talk specifically about which counties have which forms of government, but if y'all need to hear directly from some counties, we can identify those and have them speak to you.
I'm going to ask everybody to send CEO Thurman an email that we need to go investigate Palm Springs and see how that county's run. Thank you. Thank you so much, Clint. Thank you, Bill.
Thank y'all for having us.
And as I mentioned earlier, we're blessed today that the county is willing to lend us or let their staff to come and talk to us about different issues. So we do have the Director of Human Services, Damon Scott, here. And Damon, I know there's a limitation in what you can and can't say. I mean, you work for the commission, you work for the CEO, you work for Zachary, but any comments you have, knowing that we're looking at the charter, ultimately on how we make sure we get the services to people in the county as the charge the CEO gave us. If you have anything specific that might help us there, that would be great. If not, we're certainly excited to hear from you basically on whether or not you think DeKalb does a good job. But more specifically, is there anything in our work at looking at the charter or your relationship? You know, do you have any problems working with the commissioners or the CEO or to Mr. Williams that you want us to fix? Thank you. And don't be afraid. I'm sure they wouldn't hold it against you.
I like the form of government that I work in, and I love working with Mr. CEO and COO Zach Williams and our board of commissioners. Yes, we do have a unique position in human services because we have to provide services directly to the people, but I enjoy what I do and how we do it. So those are my comments at this time. I'm a little under the weather, so if y'all bear with me, I'm going to kind of go as quickly as I can, but thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Charter Review Commission. I'm going to speak to you about how we deliver human services and senior services in DeKalb County. My department maintains a budget of about $5.6 million, $2.2 million of which are allocated from the Atlanta Regional Commission for Aging Services. In that, we provide direct services for programs along with general fund dollars to help DeKalb's most vulnerable populations from birth to end of life. Slide, please. And so my department is comprised of grants division, administration, which houses our fiscal, community partnerships, and also quality assurance and other supportive areas. Our Lou Walker Senior Multi-Purpose Center, which has our largest membership of over 3,500 members. Our Office of Aging, which I'll describe a little bit later, and Human Services Transportation, and our Central DeKalb Multi-Purpose Center, which is in the Toco Hill section of the county, and our Office of Youth Services. Slide, please. And so a little bit of background. Our Office of Aging, where our senior services come from, we are responsible for the nutritional, health, and wellness, social and recreational and transportation needs of seniors age 65 and older. And in this, we are the only county-based agency recognized by the Atlanta Regional Commission to receive the state and federal dollars for senior programming in DeKalb County. And so our specific services include meals at our neighborhood senior centers, home delivered meals with those that have special nutritional needs, also information and referral, which is the calls and the phone assessments and different things that we have to do for anybody that's in need through our Senior Link line, our case management, and our transportation, which includes coordinated transportation, medical and non-medical and dialysis trips. And so with our senior services, we provide, again, meals within our senior centers, our home delivered meals, which I just described, our transportation, which we also have any senior that meets the criteria we will work with that has any mobility challenges or in any part of the county that has a transportation need and they need to get from point A to point B. And our case management services, which provides the assessments that will allow seniors to receive the services. And then our special projects, we do a lot of work with different contractors and different events and different vendors in order to make all this work. And then we provide in-home care and personal care and respite services. A lot of caregivers, especially now, are providing a lot of direct services to families that we manage. And so, as you can see from this map, on a daily basis, we're providing services across the entire county. And any given day, we're providing meals all over the county, transportation all over the county, case management all over the county, and other material aids and homemaker services across the entire county, not just one of the districts. And so here's just some quick snapshot of some of our neighborhood senior centers, which are different from our multi-purpose centers. Our neighborhood centers are mostly smaller. We have one in the Kirkwood area in DeKalb, Atlanta. We have another one in the East DeKalb Senior Center, which is in Lithonia. And then we have our South DeKalb Senior Center, which is in Decatur. And these are federally funded. And then we have one on the north side in the northern corridor in Chamblee as well. Slide, please. Central DeKalb Senior Center is one of the multi-purpose senior centers. It's in the Emory, Toco Hills, Briar Cliff, Medlock area, and that serves about 742 seniors, and it's our second largest facility currently right now at about 15,000 square feet, and it has a starting age of 62 and older. Slide, please. Again, our Lou Walker Senior Center is our largest center. It has different criteria and it was built differently than our other centers. And it's the largest of a little bit over 40,000 square feet with the recent additions of additional classroom space. And at this center, the age starts at 55 and older, and you have to be active and independent. And this center accommodates those where we're promoting health, wellness, social interactions, engagement, and independence, and a variety of programs. Our transportation, which has been extremely busy during every year. We provided over 30,000 coordinated trips. And in that, again, rides to medical appointments never stopped during the pandemic. Rides to and from senior centers, group trips, quality of life trips to areas of interest to our particular seniors, no matter where they are in the county. And then our shuttle services, which also help seniors that have mobility issues as well. We have maintained, like I said, very similar, even though in different capacity as our fire and our public safety officials. Our services have never stopped during the pandemic, even though others were remote in different capacities. And so we continue with everything that we serve, including our youth services, including infant care, end-of-life care, and other venues where we provided what we do. And so our program specific to seniors, I'll highlight the link, the Senior Link line, 770-322-2950. But one of the challenges was food insecurity and remains to be. And so we provide over 70,000 meals annually and over 129,000 meals to eligible seniors that are homebound, in addition to our in-home care and personal care services. Slide, please. And so we also provide senior wellness checks, including case management, and we created a virtual environment where we have 60 online classes that helps our seniors, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And again, our Senior Link line is 770-322-2950. Next is a slide of just some examples of our seniors participating in multiple and varied classes on our online platform to stay engaged. Through our mobility programs, I'll just highlight the need, and it is something that we do. We collaborate very well with Modern Mobility and have an agreement with them to do paratransit, and in addition to the transportation I provided, information I provided a little bit earlier. Again, we provide outdoor events and do a lot of different senior programming to spotlight our services. And so just a quick snapshot of our achievements in 2021 and 2022. We achieved, again, an annual appropriation of $2.2 million from the Atlanta Regional Commission to continue our aging services. We received national accreditation and became the first senior center in DeKalb County to receive this accreditation as a senior center of excellence from the National Council of Aging at our Lou Walker Multipurpose Center. We conducted the first pop-up COVID vaccination clinic for seniors in partnership with the DeKalb County Board of Health, vaccinating over 1,300 seniors. We assisted in the development of the first mobile COVID vaccination program for homebound seniors in partnership with Fire Rescue and Board of Health. We were also the first county to repurpose our human services transportation to deliver meals to homebound seniors during the pandemic who did not have access to senior centers and who were not part of the home delivered meals program. And we were able to use federal emergency funding to deliver meals to seniors at their location and their place of residence. We also, the DeKalb Human Services Department received an national award through the County National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C. for our service delivery model during the pandemic, where we implemented a concept called Senior Center Without Walls. And that allowed us to basically deconstruct whatever was happening in a senior center and bring that directly to where seniors lived and engage them in different platforms. With the help of CIO Metalski and the IT department, we launched the Virtual Village, which I mentioned before, with online classes for our seniors, and over 4,100 senior center memberships and 50,000 visits to our websites. We also have 2 new senior centers coming online in partnership with the DeKalb Community Development Department, who leads the building and construction process. So one will be built from the ground up, and it'll be ready pretty soon in Lithonia, which we already have one, but this will be a newer one. And then a brand new center with aquatics in the Stone Mountain area on Elam Road, which will be later, maybe into the beginning of 2023. And just recently, we became the first county in the state of Georgia to receive the designation of being dementia-friendly by the Dementia-Friendly American National Organization. We've been working on this process for about 3 years to receive that designation, to make sure that everybody's aware of seniors that are facing dementia and Alzheimer's and other associated and related illnesses and challenges. So that's how we've been serving our seniors in DeKalb County. At this time, I'll open it up for a few questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Damon. Let me ask you a couple questions to start, in case anybody needs any prodding on what we might ask you. Is you mentioned those other offices, Office of Aging or the Lou Walker Center. You know, do you hire the people that run the Department of Aging or the Lou Walker Center? If you thought somebody wasn't doing a good job in doing those, do you see any obstacles, or how would you contact Mr. Williams? Would you contact the CEO? Would you contact your local commissioner? How would you go about making sure that those services are administrated effectively, and what authorities do you have?
Okay, thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. I hire the people. I work with our human resources department. I also consult with COO Zach Williams. Also, we have a quality assurance division that I established within human services to make sure that we are following state guides, regs, and stay in compliance with our funding source, as well with the Atlanta Regional Commission for anything that seniors may receive that come through that funding stream. So I have the authority to make those decisions, and I don't necessarily have to update the Board of Commissioners, but I will inform up if there is any problems or challenges to COO and CEO if it should arise. But that's not something I've had to experience in the time I've been in as well.
But if you ever did, you have the authority fired, you would just inform up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then secondly, can you tell us what parameters you have in actually fixing something? If Lou Walker Center needed a front door that was $3,000, could you do it? They needed a new roof that was $50,000, or like a big project like the Aquatic Center. Does that get recommended by the CEO's office or by the COO's office, or does the commission vote on those big issues? What range of delivery and how do you get those things done?
It starts with the staffing on the ground and myself when we're looking at our facility accommodations, and also consulting with our facilities department and putting in a line item budget request that goes through our budgetary process, which goes to the COO and the budget director. And then from there, is this only specific to Lou Walker, or is it across all of the senior centers as a point of clarity? But that's what we would do for Lou Walker. And then from there, based on the cost and the budgetary process, a recommendation will come forth that the Board of Commissioners would have to approve about whether or not that funding and item line would be available to us in whatever year it's being requested, and then we will work the process to get it fixed.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that information. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Scott?
Mr. Wittenstein has his hand raised, sir.
Yeah, so first let me say, Mr. Scott, thank you for the work that you do, which is incredibly valuable to many of our most vulnerable county residents. Representative Hanson, or Senator Hanson talked about, the authority that you have. Let me ask about what's above you. Who hired you? Who supervises you? Do you get annual appraisals? Who from? Have you had periods of time where you didn't think that the CEO, have you been there long enough to work under multiple CEOs? Have there been differences of management style for those CEOs, which has either helped or hindered your activities? Give us a sense of what it's like to be you.
All right. I've been in this role for a little bit over 4.5 years now. I was hired by COO and CEO Thurman, COO Zach Williams, and CEO Thurman. I report directly to COO Zach Williams on most items, but I have accessibility to CEO Thurman as any issues arise and anything that needs to come forward to the administration. And they've been completely accessible to me and open to and supportive of the things that I was charged with when I was hired to make us a world-class human services center. And I think that with their support and those accomplishments that you saw in the past 2 years, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Thank
you. Mr. Chair, Mr. Hammonds has his hand raised.
Please, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask, Mr. Scott, thank you for the information. Do you have a feel for how many seniors we actually have in DeKalb and how many are we reaching?
Great question. Yes, we're reaching about a quarter of the seniors on a regular basis. There's close to 120,000 seniors in the county, but not all of them meet the criteria for the services we provide. If and when and somewhere down the road, if the state of Georgia extends a Medicaid waiver or goes in that realm, it could change. But underneath the current auspices that we have and the funding that we have, we're reaching about a fourth of the population.
So does that mean the other 2/3 don't need it, or?
It really would take a whole nother type of assessment in order to determine that. Because for example, most services for seniors other than Lou Walker that has an admission age of 55 start at 60 plus. So you may have somebody at 15 at 59 and a half, so they would not qualify. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to be a senior in the next 6 months, and they would be, but it would have to be assessed at that time. So there's a lot of different things where we throw the net, cast the net fairly wide, but there, I would say in that 2/3 figure, there probably are those that don't need any services just yet, but it doesn't mean that they won't down the road, because everybody's getting older each by the day.
Okay, and the last question is, you threw up the mobility bus, and I guess that's if you don't have a car, don't want to drive, but is there anything for a senior, say, I'm in the Rockbridge 124 area, say I want to go have dinner at Stonecrest and I just don't feel like driving, or I don't see that well at night. Could I call the bus and say, come on, honey, we're going to go to dinner and the bus will bring me back?
That it wouldn't be that coordinated transportation, but that situation would qualify for our voucher program, where they would be able to select their own driver, and the county and through my human services transportation would reimburse for that trip, and couple that with the state funds that we receive. And we call that a quality of life trip. And that would be eligible, what you described, underneath our voucher program in the transportation division.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bobby, did you have something?
I did have a question. I happen to be a senior, and I'd like to congratulate us on having these wonderful services for seniors. I guess my concern is we've got a lot of programs. How is this information being disseminated to seniors? Is it only shared with those who are attending maybe the Lou Walker Center or some of the senior centers? How do our seniors at large know how to access and participate in some of these programs that we're offering?
Great question. We have most of the information active on our website. So if you go to DeKalbCountyGA.gov and you follow the tab underneath Human Services, the information that I'm sharing around senior services and aging services will be underneath the Human Services dropdown. So you can check it out. And then we also routinely, for anything new that we do, we consult with the CEO's communications department. And we put out press releases to make sure that our information is reaching as many people and many seniors as we possibly can. And we also utilize our nonprofit organizations, and also we utilize our senior centers to help distribute information. But the best source is through our website that we try to keep as up to date as possible. That's the best source, single source of truth right now.
Thank you.
Susan Nugent, do you have a comment or a question?
Yes, your reference, Mr. Scott, to the state's lack of expanding Medicaid. If the state were to do that, how would that change the level of services? What kind of financial difference would that make? How many more seniors would we serve?
It would be difficult to say exactly how many, because it still would be driven by an assessment process, but that we do know that there are seniors due to income and other things that do not qualify for services right now. And it is, in my prior experience, through a waiver, there are different levels and tiers of case management and also entry-level services that currently are not available, and our general fund dollars are just not enough. And what we get reimbursed from through our Atlanta Regional Commission dollars are not enough. So there are entry-level services that could help underneath a Medicaid expansion to help offset probably the 20,000 calls. Literally, that's the number that I have through our information and referral line. some of that could be alleviated if we had some access to additional resources that were covered federally, but that we don't have right now at the moment. But to quantify the actual number would be kind of hard to say, but I do think that that quarter that we're serving now will probably uptick probably by about another 30,000 if I had to guess.
Thank you. That's Ms. Nugent is on the board for the Budget and Policy Institute, so she might be able to get you some more some more facts for that. She probably get it faster than we can, Mr. Scott. Well, I appreciate that, and I'm going to have to terminate this right now to move to the next session, which is should be quick, but new business and old business. And if you would, could you put up the resolution on the staffing, Mr. Molesky?
One moment, sir. I'm trying to figure out which document that one is.
It was the last one on the one that.
I'm sorry. Is it a document we've already seen, or it's another?
No, it was earlier that, and we could bring it up next time, but it was a document that was sent out by Zach Williams earlier.
Oh, I think I have it. The resolution. I think.
Yeah, resolution.
Yeah, my apologies. One moment, please.
Thank you. This is a brief resolution, and it really conveys things that the CEO has stated he'd like us to have, which is adequate staffing. And I was wondering if you would look over this real quick. Mr. Grubiak, would you kind of go over it real quick, just tell what it does, and then we'll see if you want to do it again. I'm confident that we will get the help we need.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think really it just breaks down to three different areas. One is staffing generally, and it lays out some of the things that you would expect or we as members would expect to do as members of the commission. Staffing, and it could be existing county staff, outside experts, university consultants, and others that might be identified, but staffing that would help us conduct research, schedule presentations as needed, compile findings. We may be doing research, and at some point in time, we need to kind of look at what we found. In other words, compile the research. Recording the meetings. Of course, we're already in the process of, I guess, recording today's meeting, but doing that along with maintaining rosters and posting notices, the things that are required for the open meetings law, facilitating meetings of the commission, and preparing reports. Then legal support would be another major category to the extent needed. We may not need any, but to the extent needed, we're requesting that the Board of Commissioners and the CEO provide the legal staff to the county attorney or however else they choose fit to do it. And then really the third is the appropriations question is the resolution requests that the DeKalb County CEO and the Board of Commissioners appropriate the funds necessary to conduct the business of the commission. Just a broad statement. So it's really just trying to make a point that we have a serious task in front of us. Serious task deserves to have proper staff and have the resources to carry it out. And so it's an expression of that of opinion to that point. So,
Mr. Chair, Ms. Hinkle has her hand raised.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Hinkle.
No, I just want to add here, it's somewhere I've been participating in the DeKalb 2050 Unified Comprehensive Plan process. And the consultants have been using technologically, surveys that as you're looking at something virtually, they can ask a question and you can prioritize items. You can, do things on the screen and then they can see that. And I think as we go out and work with the public, I'd really love to have the ability for people to do, maybe it's a survey through John's group, an online survey that we can keep going and get results through that. But I just want to somehow implant on our consulting staff's mind that we want to use some good technology to get a broad response from citizens.
Thank you. You know, and to what was commented by Mr. Grubiak, I mean, I put the blame on myself at this time. I have talked to Georgia State and tried to get hold of Andy Young School of Government. Michael Thurman advised me to talk to them. Started. And then Charles Hankla over there at GSU has helped me a little bit. And then I've also talked to Carl Benson, but we haven't moved along that well. And I wasn't even aware of the technology, Mary, that you brought forth that I'll ask about as we move forward.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any hesitation on anybody's part that we get what we need. It just want to make sure the public knows that we are interested. And CEO Thurman, if you would make a comment about, your feel of what we might need.
Well, no, back more to the, I guess, the tenor of Mr. Grubiak's resolution. I think we made very clear in executive order that any resources needed will be made available. His resolution does not acknowledge that fact. And I think it creates or suggests somehow that was not an intent when we created the executive order. And I don't know whether he intended that, but the way it's written now definitely suggests that. And
well, I actually asked him to work up something after comments with some other members about staffing, and I told him I was working on it. But I see your point, and I don't have any objection if there's no objection from the commission that we move forward under the executive order. We continue to communicate with Zach and you about the staffing, but we need help. We know we need help, and we can move forward. But we certainly don't want to in any way suggest that you haven't been trying to get us help, or that you, in your executive order, didn't outline many of these items that we would have technical and support.
No, I understand. It's just that the resolution doesn't acknowledge that.
Okay. Well, do you think you could add that, and maybe we'll bring it up next meeting where you acknowledge the words in the CEO's resolution? Or
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that certainly was not intended to disparage anyone's action so far. It was just trying to express an opinion, a thought that we needed to be, properly and fully staffed, with the expectation it was going to be happening. But so there was nothing intended to be negative in that.
No, and I know I'm not suggesting that. It's just that once you create a record, the record actually speaks going forward.
I think that could easily be remedied between now and next meeting if you want to do it at all, basically.
No, I don't have any problem. I mean, we created it with the expectation that we're going to provide all the resources needed in order for this commission to be successful.
We'll put in the intro of it, or acknowledge that fact and bring it back next meeting.
Yeah, not a problem.
But in the meantime, of course, between now and the next meeting, which I recommend in a second, I'm sure I'll be talking with your office, or at least the COO is your designee under the executive order, some of the staffing thoughts that we have.
Perfect.
Thanks. Does anybody have any problem then moving forward? If not, is there any other new business or anything anybody else thinks we need to, address at this time? Ms. Mary Hinkle.
Sorry, Steve, I do. I think especially for new members of the commission, we have a whole notebook full of information, much of which needs to be updated because it's 2 years old. So we need a new contacts listing. We need the budget. We had a budget there from 19 or 20. We had the 20 budget. The service delivery strategy was in there, and that's probably been a little bit. And then I think that's it. But I think the new members should know that on the website, there is all of this information. It's just that it's dated right now. So I don't know if Dolores Kroll or someone in the CEO's office could review that and send us out updated information.
We'll make sure.
Williams.
Yeah, Mr.
Thank
Williams
you.
will make sure that happens.
Mr. Williams, gonna get my email up there.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's great. And don't hesitate if you don't see something in the next week's head, give me a call, text me, and then, you know, everybody wants to help. Sometimes if we don't get what we need, it's on us and we don't ask. So Mr. Williams has responded quick every time I've called or texted. And if you don't see something come through and you want to call or text me, and then I'll forward that on to him and he'll make it happen. But yeah, we'll try to get an updated budget or what information they have. And a few other people have mentioned some other reports along the line that might be interesting to share. Any other new business? If not, we'll go on to the public comment. We want to have at least 15 minutes of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you are on and would like to make a public comment to the Charter Review Commission members, please feel free to use the raised hand feature. Limit your comments, if you would, please, to 3 minutes or less. And of course, no derogatory or profane language would be preferred and actually requested and mandated. So with that in mind, again, if you would like to make a comment, please use the raised hand feature. If you're on the phone, #2. And Mr. Chairman, at this time, we have no requests for public comment.
Well, I think that may change as we get further along in the process, but I'm very appreciative for all you who are not on the commission who have stayed on here. I appreciate especially the people we've worked with, Lori Brill with the Carl Vinson Center, and Charles Hankler with Georgia State University, and others who have participated in our request, and also to all of you who have shown an interest in this. This is an important process, and it's going to be a somewhat time consuming and at times tedious process, but it's going to be interesting, and hopefully we'll get something positive done.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Charles Hanklin does have his hand raised. If
Okay. Recognize, and I'll let you run the public notes. John.
Go ahead, sir, please. You actually are a co-host, so feel free to, if you want to start your video, go ahead, and please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to say hello and say that we at Georgia State University are excited to play, we hope, a useful role in assisting you, along with our colleagues at the University of Georgia. I'm Charles Hankler. I'm a professor at Georgia State, and an affiliate with the Fiscal Research Cluster at the Andrew Young School. I hope Senator Hinson reached out to me earlier, and I'm hoping to be able to bring some staff your way, including doctoral students and others who have expertise in these areas to assist you in the important work. And I just wanted to mention one other thing, that this is, a lot of my work has been on the international side, working with local governments in other countries. But this is something that's really close to my heart because I'm a DeKalb native, born in DeKalb General Hospital and a graduate all 12 years from the DeKalb public school system. You know, this is obviously, I care a lot about the county and am excited about and honored to hopefully be a part of the process. So thank you so much for including me.
Thank you for being on. Is that all, John?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
That is it for this time.
So I appreciate it again. Again, the next meetings that I'm going to set will be, as I talked about earlier, on Wednesday, June 22nd and July 20th, to have the county attorney and their office go over the organizational act or charter, if you will, section by section, so we can ask questions and kind of see how it lays out. And then we'll move on to public hearings, at least a couple after that. I want to suggest to you that you contact me if you have any issues, but I know, for instance, a couple of members have Wednesday night meetings. I know that there's a couple with problems on Monday with the school board. County attorney can make any time work that we request, but they do have commission meetings on Tuesday and often work late Monday. So the best I kind of found so far is the second Thursday of each month to be our reoccurring monthly meeting after this. But if you have an issue, give me a call and we can discuss that and bring it up and change it if we have to at the next meeting. But that's what we would be looking at. And then August 11th would be then kind of the formation of our second Thursday meetings after that. So I will look forward to you all. If there's no objection, to get together again on June 22nd on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. Again, we'll strive to try to get these meetings in a couple hours. I doubt they'll all be this close, but what we managed today, I want to thank you again for the staff of the county and for our CEO, our executive assistant, who is our liaison here today. And don't want to thank each and every one of you for your work.
Thank you.
May we have your contact? May we have your contact information?
Let me make sure again that you remember that my cell phone number is 678-907-2723. And I also want anybody in the public to feel free to call me if they have questions. And want anybody in the public to feel free to text me with questions. And if they have any requests about when we do or where we do the public comments, or when we do in-person meetings that we will do if the health situation permits, feel free to call me. Secondly, my email is stevehenson@mindspring.com, STEVEHENSON @mindspring, MINDSPRING, and of course .com, and of course that will be to all the commission members. You'll get a list, update a list with a few phone numbers of some of the commissioners and email addresses. If anybody's given me your cell phone or your phone number and you don't want me to give it out on a list, then you might want to send me an email saying that was confidential. Otherwise, I might share it to other commission members. So is there a motion for any other discussion, or I'm open to a motion to adjourn if there's not?
So move to adjourn.
The motion to adjourn, I'm going to accept it without a second. And,
Second.
there you go. Thank you, Ms. Anfred. We appreciate all of your service. We'll see you at the next meeting, which will be June 22nd, a little more than about 2 weeks away. So thank you so much.